Hello there, everyone. How are you doing today? I hope you are all well. Before we get started with today's video, I would like to make one thing abundantly clear. My old content schedule has left me burned out, so I'm going to have to reduce the daily videos to once a week horror story narrations. I will provide other content in between, but it will not be horror story related. My apologies in advance. Thank you for understanding. Now, without further ado, let's get started. Count Julius Productions. I have the ability to sense the demonic. Part 4. I stared wide-eyed as I took in my surroundings of the bustling city around us. I turned around, but the portal the four of us came through was now just a normal brick wall covered in advertisements and old chewing gum. The only sign that there had been any mystical doorway at all was the swirling pieces of discarded trash disturbed by our immediate arrival. Where exactly are we? I asked. Seattle, Oliver answered, as he grabbed something, a black jacket from Lila's bag, and put it on. He led us down the narrow alleyway and onto the main street. Let's head over to Odessa's. Rhysand hasn't replied back and I'm starving. I have a few questions, I whispered to Lila as we headed down the street. What happened to your car, and how the heck did we come out of a wall without anyone noticing? Someone has been sent out to collect it, and to answer your other question, Oliver placed a temporary glamour over us as we stepped through the portal. I was completely invisible? I thought as I glanced down at myself. Half an hour later, the four of us stood in front of a restaurant. The sign bearing its name tilted in a slight angle. Lila stretched her arms wide with enthusiasm. Welcome to the greatest restaurant in the whole city, she declared proudly. It didn't look that spectacular, to be honest, but I didn't say anything. It was a quaint place and brightly lit, which illuminated the snug booths lined with comfortable cushions that flanked the wall across from the kitchen and open bar. A gorgeous girl around my age, with pink hair and blue eyes, waved at us. She placed a pen and notepad inside the pocket of her black and blue spotless uniform and handed the four of us the menus, gesturing for us to sit where we liked. Oliver and Lila moved so unhesitantly to one of the open booths at the very back that I realized that this was a regular pit stop for them. Roland and I shared a look and then followed after them. Oliver slid into the booth and Roland and I took the seat across from him. I'm gonna use the restroom real quick, Lila stated. I'll be right back. I watched as she twirled on her heels and headed over to where the pink-haired girl was. The two of them disappeared behind a black curtain that read staff only. I wondered what that was all about. Maybe she knew the girl personally or something. A tall, busty woman with thick, curly brown hair and bright amber-colored eyes arrived with 4 glasses of water and silverware. Good evening. My name is Lucinda, and I'll be your server tonight. Oh, it's nice to see you again, Oliver, she said cheerfully. Oliver smiled. Good evening, Lucy. As the two conversed, I noticed up close that her smile was full of sharp, needle-like teeth. I quickly averted my eyes to the menu in front of me. Then she turned her attention back on her notepad. So, what would you like to start with? Coffee, please. Oliver placed the menu down in front of him. Black and a strawberry lemonade for my partner, he added. I'll have a raspberry iced tea, Roland said. I'll have the same thing, please. Sure thing. She smiled as she scribbled it all down. Should I give you more time to browse our menu, or are you ready to order? Yes, I'm ready, Oliver said. I'll get me usual. Same for my partner. I'll have the skillet steak dinner, medium with a side of onion rings. Roland smiled at her as he placed his menu on top of Oliver's. She nodded and turned to me. I noticed that her eyes changed from amber to solid white. No pupils at all. What about you, sweetheart? I glanced back down at the items, which I barely had time to look at. My fingers tightened on the menu in order to keep my hands from shaking. My eyes widened as I did a double take as I scanned each item. There were various kinds of meals that were otherworldly, but not apparently anything normal. Where Roland had seen steak and onion rings. Lucinda grinned. Don't worry, sweetheart. Human food is on the back. Oh, thanks. I turned the menu over, and without thinking, I chose the first thing I saw. I'll just have the chicken Caesar wrap with a side of steak fries, please. Sure thing, Lucinda purred, and collected all of our menus. I'll take these and be right back with your drinks. Lila returned from behind the curtain and slid back in beside Oliver. She placed her bag beneath the table and combed her fingers through her hair. I noticed that she had changed clothes, that she had switched out her faded sweatshirt for a green blouse under a black leather jacket. Under her blouse, right over her sternum, was a long diagonal scar against her dark skin. She must have caught me staring because she laughed and said, It's all right. You can ask me the question I know you're dying to ask. When I didn't say anything right away, she sighed and touched the scar. Okay, well, I'll explain it anyway. So, in short, I underwent an experimental treatment using a serum mixed with axolotl DNA giving me superhuman healing abilities, she said. The scar will be completely gone by tomorrow morning, but I'm kinda like Deadpool, but without the terminal cancer and permanent scarring. That's pretty awesome, but I just have one question. What are you gonna do with... I hesitated, struggled to find the words that wouldn't turn things awkward between us. You know, your heart in a jar. That, my friend, is classified information. She smiles, tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear. Anyway, I can always count on Brayden to have an extra pair of clothes for me if I need them. Although, it really sucks that I couldn't save my sweatshirt. You should start wearing your uniform, Lila. I'm tired of hearing you whine. Remember what happened last time? Yeah, I know. But the uniform they gave me is too small, and moving around in it is a pain in the ass. I sent the bureau another request, but I have to wait a few more days until the new one arrives. She huffed. Also, it's not really like I need a uniform anyway. Uniform? I asked curiously. I didn't think the tight black shirt and pants Oliver was wearing was an actual uniform. Of course, Lila said. Our uniforms are made with very special fibers, which makes them almost indestructible to most attacks. Think of them as supernatural bulletproof vests. That's actually freaking awesome, I exclaimed. I know, right? She smiled. Okay, now I'm curious, Roland said as he sat back in his seat. What happened last time? Oliver and I were hunting a Wendigo spotted up in the mountains a few months back, and I chose to be the bait, she answered him simply. You know, it really sucks being without a body. It makes self-preservation much more difficult. Then she turned her head towards Oliver with a large smile. Hey, the next time I'm ripped apart, you have to take a picture of what my insides look like. Holy crap, this girl was insane. Definitely more of a masochist than Roland was with his ability to heal others. Oliver rolled his eyes, and for a split second, I could have sworn I saw a ghost of a smirk on his face. "You're so weird," he said, and he took a sip of his coffee. "Yeah, but you're used to it." Lila laughed. "So, what's your ability, Oliver?" I asked, and immediately cursed myself for being so gosh dang nosy. Oliver turned to me, but to my relief he didn't seem annoyed about it, just a little distant. "My ability? Well, I don't necessarily have some supernatural ability, of my own, that is. What you witnessed down there in the station was a Yaka, a vengeful spirit who has been wandering the world for centuries, killing and feeding on the essence of monsters, human and cryptid alike." He took a moment before continuing. "Before joining the Bureau, I witnessed her ripping into one of my friends who, unbeknownst to me, got away with torturing and murdering a poor 6-year-old girl. For some reason, she took an interest in me, and soon after that we made a pact. Ayaka has been with me ever since." What a way to gain a supernatural ability. And a scary one, to be honest. I decided to change the subject. "So, what is the Bureau exactly, and why hasn't anyone in the human world proven that the supernatural world exists? I mean, with the technology we have today, wouldn't there be someone out there with solid proof?" I asked. Our food arrived before anyone could reply. Lucinda made her way over with food and drinks, skillfully balancing them on her arms. Possibly she was using some kind of magic. I couldn't see how else she kept the plates from dropping to the floor, as she deftly balanced and placed them on the table in front of us. "This looks so good. I'm starving," Lila said. She picked a steak fry between her fingers and dipped it into her buffalo sauce. Roland agreed as he took a bite out of his food. Lucinda smiled. "There you go," she asked. "Can I get you for anything else?" We said no and thanked her, and after she left, Oliver took a sip of his coffee and said, "Only selected humans around the world of the planet know the truth of the existence of the supernatural world. There are some within the police departments and military, and even the governments." He grabbed the fry and bit into it before he continued. "And the Bureau of Supernatural Intelligence and Defense, or BSID, takes great measures at keeping the supernatural world secret from the rest of the human world. Of course, some of them have their own personal reasons for keeping the general populace in the dark. And as you already know, Lila and I work for the BSID. The BSID has agents, cryptids, and humans with special abilities, like Lila and I, who are skilled in capturing or killing rogue cryptids. The ones we are able to detain are moved back to a special, well-guarded facility someplace far away from this civilization." "So that guy in the station, what was he?" I asked, my head spinning from all of this. "A vampire," Roland answered. "Correct." Oliver nodded and placed his cup down. "Are you serious?" "I guess that makes sense from what I've seen in most media. Most vampires look pretty human, aside from small differences," I said. "That's just a human facade. Normally, vampires use in order to lure in their prey." Oliver shook a fry at me. "Their true forms resemble bats out of hell. Trust me when I tell you that they're not some undead heartthrob with a tortured soul or any of that bullshit. Vampires are predators, notorious in taking great pleasure in torturing their victims before draining them dry." "So, their personalities are pretty much like the vamps from 30 Days of Night," I said, taking a bite out of my food. "Yes, exactly. That's one of the reasons I enjoyed that film. Lila smiled. Although vampires in real life could rip that entire horde to pieces within seconds. Damn, I said. So, when are we meeting this Rhysand? Roland asked. He called and gave me an update. There's a hotel just a few blocks away from here. He booked you two in a room already, and he figured you two might need a place to stay for the night. Lila replied. He had an important meeting with the BSID, so he won't be back until morning. Wow, that's pretty nice of him, I said. And I'll let you know, this particular hotel provides accommodations and services for supernatural entities only. Don't worry though. Lila turned to me and smiled, clearly amused by my reaction. We got you covered. It was a little after 9 by the time we made our way to the hotel. All of us stayed near the entrance. As Lila, Roland, and I headed inside, the place was cozy and warm. There was a large cobblestone fireplace, the wood crackling embers. To our right there was a decent-sized lounge area, opposite the bar. Lila told us to wait in the lobby for a moment, and made her way over to the reception desk, where an elderly woman sat, typing away at a computer. My eyes swept the area, and I could immediately tell that most of the patrons looked anything but normal. A few had various shades of skins. Others seemed to have a limit to too many, with extrusions or concavities in their face. Only a few even looked remotely human, aside from minor differences. A few entities over at the bar glanced over at us with mild interest before going back to their own business. It was probably because I just rewatched Supergirl a few weeks ago, but this place kinda reminded me of Val's dive bar. This was a place where supernatural beings could have a drink and a place to normally stay. I smiled, feeling really lucky at that moment to have been given a chance to see this whole other world. An attractive young man around my age with short black hair, dipped in his crimson-colored tips, pale skin, and bright eyes sat by himself on one side of the bar table. I spotted sharp, jagged teeth protruding, and in his mouth he ordered a mojito with a few drops of sangre. I don't know what the sangre was, but as soon as I watched the bartender handle the young man his drink, and with a long black nail he stirred it, the crimson drops mixing with the liquid. He must have caught me staring, because he lifted his head and turned to look at me. He smiled and winked at me. I flushed and averted my gaze to the floor. Holy crap! Roland placed his hand on my shoulder, and I met his eyes. Hey, what's the matter, Gav? I think that's actually blood in that guy's... You know what, never mind. Before Roland could say anything, Lila called for our attention, and we made our way over to her. Lila handed us her number, just in case we get into any trouble. With a wave, she headed out the door. The woman behind the desk stood up and studied the two of us. The woman's silver hair was weathered and thin. Pulled back tightly in a bun, her yellow eyes brightened. Good evening, gentlemen. She smiled a toothy, albeit human smile. You're lucky to have booked a room during our busy season. She bent down behind the desk and handed Roland and I each our own keycard, etched with pale green runes. There you are. Enjoy your stay. Roland and I thanked her and took the elevator up to the 4th floor. We made our way down the hallway to our room, reading each door number as we passed. When we came to our room, I reached into the pocket and slid the card into the door lock. The hall light above us turned on automatically, revealing a sizable room with a small balcony overlooking the city. A flat-screen television was mounted on the wall, above an oak desk that faced 2 queen-size beds, with a bathroom to our left and a small kitchen to our right, closest to the door. Roland shrugged off his duffel and placed it on the foot of the bed to the window. Since we'll be meeting with Rhysand in the morning, we should get some rest, he stated, and as he unzipped his bag, he placed 2 bundles of clothes on his desk. I brought these for you, just in case you'd like to clean up. Thanks, I appreciate it, man. I glanced inside the bag and spotted a few towels and toiletries. A mag light and a black case. So, is this what you carry in your duffel of yours all the time? What did you think I carried in there? He asked. I stepped away from the bag in order for him to zip it up. I shrugged and scratched my head. I don't know, but I figured it must be important since you carry it everywhere. I take it with me wherever I go out in case I have to. Wolf out? Yeah, it's a good thing I grabbed it from the jeep that night when we attacked. Otherwise, I would have waited by the side of the road, naked with you unconscious in my arms. I turned away from him and moved to get ready for bed. My cheeks burned. I absolutely did not get a mental image of my best friend, naked as he carried me out the forest. Nope. Falling asleep was difficult. I twisted and turned in the bed. It wasn't that the bed was uncomfortable, but anxiety plagued my mind, and I woke up a couple times in the night, covered in sweat, staring at shadows on the walls. There was a constant buzzing sound from the thermostat that I waxed and waned through the nights. I checked the alarm clock on the nightstand. It read 5:03 a.m. I sighed and sat up. I could see Roland fast asleep with his back to me. I was about to change positions and lay back down when I felt something akin to a headache. It felt like a weird pressure that tugged the back of my mind, like a soft foreign whisper. I gently pushed away the covers and stood up. I was making my way to the kitchen to grab a glass of water when the headache started to worsen. It started out small until it began to throb. I groaned as I placed my hand on the head. Suddenly, I heard a voice. Words entered my head as if they were my own, but they weren't. I tried my best to silence the ominous whispers, but they persisted. Do not be afraid, Gavin. The throbbing headache soon lessened into a warm breeze that traveled through the twists and turns of my mind. I've been expecting you. Come to room 207. As if in some sort of trance, I walked over to the door as the voice beckoned me forward. I quietly turned the knob and opened the door. Thankfully, it was outside of my room. And as if my legs have a mind of their own, I walked my way down the hallway. I passed a dozen or so rooms before I came to a stop in front of room 207. Suddenly, I felt like I was in control of my body again. Before I could raise my fist to knock, however, the door swung open. My eyes swept around the room. It was much bigger than the one Roland and I shared. A suite, I assumed. Hello? I called from the doorway. Anyone here? Your door's open, and it's nice to finally meet you. A tall, wiry man in his late 30s stepped out of the bedroom and into the light of the small hallway. His long, dark brown hair was streaked silver at one side, partially tied up behind his head. The rest of it draped down in his back. He wore a gray pocket slim V-neck vest over a black, long-sleeved shirt and dark jeans. With curiosity, I stepped further into the room. I could definitely see his face more clearly. Crow's feet appeared around his pale blue eyes, which almost looked white in the lighting. Suddenly, this door swung closed behind me with a gentle click. I immediately panicked. I tried to feel for the door handle, while keeping my eyes trained on the man just in case he tried anything. I found it, but before I could turn the knob, the man held up both hands in front of him. It's all right, he said. I mean you no harm. Please, come down and sit. I made some coffee. I shook my head. My whole body was itching to open the door and bolt down the hallway. No thanks. Hold on. Don't you want to know why I called you here? I'm sure my assistants have already told you about me. The mention of Lila and Oliver gave me pause. Wait, you're Rhysand? Yes, Rhysand nodded. Indeed I am, but you can just call me Rhys. I prefer it. I hesitated for a moment before making my way to the couch. But before I could take a seat, the doors wrenched open, and Roland barged in with messy wild hair, and golden eyes sharp, almost frightening. He stalked towards Rhysand, who stood where he was seemingly unfazed by Roland's intimidating demeanor. Suddenly, Roland was on the ground, clutching his head in his hands. Roland! I pushed past Rhysand and made my way over to my friend. Hey, what did you do with him? Your outburst is really unnecessary, Rhysand said with a tisk. After whatever power on him broke, Roland cursed under his breath and got to his feet. Unnecessary? He growled out, and his growl rippled across my own flesh due to our proximity, making me shiver. Imagine waking up to an empty room and getting a scent of your friend's distress all the way down the hall. Rhysand seemed to consider his explanation for a moment. All right. Let's start over, shall we? The fire crackled as the three of us sat around a coffee table. Rhysand pushed a few piles of books and other various items out of the way, except for a glass globe, perched on a small stand in the center. Only it was blank, with no continents or ocean maps out along its curving surface. Rhysand must have seen the look on my face because he smiled and placed a hand on the top. The ball started to move and it suddenly came alight. Whoa, that's amazing! I sat forward in my seat to get a closer look. Nice, isn't it? It's only 5 in existence, he said. The glow within the globe began to separate itself into a 3-dimensional sphere, as thousands of tiny points appeared and its glass surface disappeared completely. So, I've been told you two wanted my help, he said. Tell me everything. I sat back and told him everything I could remember the night we were attacked. And he listened calmly all the way through until I mentioned my ability and the block that had been placed inside my head. Rhysand stilled, and for a moment I wasn't even sure if he was breathing. Something flashed across his face. What is it? Roland asked. Instead of answering, Rhysand instructed me to lie down on the chase lounge as he brought a stool over and took a seat beside me. I'm just going to do a sweep of your mind. You might feel a slight discomfort. Do you trust me? I took a deep breath and nodded. I've come this far. I wasn't about to back out now. Good. Now calm your mind to the best of your ability. His hands came up to my face. Up close I could see that his hands were inked in elegant swirling tattoos. I could feel the power thrumming beneath his slim fingers. It was like an electric charge that was hot and thrilling against my skin. It suddenly pricked like invisible talons scraping against something deep within my mind. And it pressed down, hard, but it wasn't painful. Not really, I realized. Then the pressure was gone and my eyes snapped open. Are you alright, Gav? How do you feel? Roland asked. He placed a hand behind my back and helped me ease into a sitting position. Yeah, I'm fine, I said, my voice sounding a little shaky. I looked over to Rhysand. So is there a way to remove the block in my mind? Rhysand knitted his brows together and nodded. Yes, but this one is unique and can only be safely undone by the one who put it there. I sighed heavily. Great, this was starting to turn into some wild goose chase. You don't have to worry, Gavin, he said, holding up a finger, because I know exactly who placed it there. Who? You did, my dearest person. And that was chapter 4 of I Have the Ability to Sense the Demonic. Check out the author, Dark Adalia, and the story down in the description below. They do amazing work, and I'll see you next time. Okay, bye. I hope you enjoyed. Please like and subscribe, it helps the channel a lot. See you next time.